Hello, this is a brief message for Easter 2022 for the churches of Amy and Ace of the Anglican network in Europe. What comes to mind when you think of Easter? Well, commercials, adverts, try to imprint various things on our minds. In the last 24 hours, I have seen repeated references to multiple types of hot cross buns and also to chocolate gold-covered rabbits with a little bell tied round their necks, which apparently if you ring may bring something special to you. And this is drilled into our minds by constant repetition. That's what adverts do. Well, I love buns and I love chocolate. But what is it that should come to our minds again and again as we celebrate Easter as essential for the Christian churches that we're part of? It's a question that I ask candidates who wish to serve in Anglican network churches. Well, in Paul's letter to the Corinthians, the first letter, 1 Corinthians chapter 15, he is writing to what had become a fractious and divided church. And it was a church where some people had come and were clearly saying that there is no resurrection of the dead. Verse 12. Well, Paul answers this by pointing out precisely what is at stake in this. And in doing so, he outlines what is the essence of the Christianity upon which they were based and upon which we are based. Let me read to you the first 5 verses of chapter 15. Now I would remind you, brothers, of the gospel I preached to you, which you received, in which you stand, and by which you are being saved, if you hold fast to the word I preached to you, unless you believed in vain. For I delivered to you as of first importance what I also received, that Christ died for our sins, in accordance with the Scriptures, that he was buried, that he was raised on the 3rd day, in accordance with the Scriptures, and that he appeared to Cephas, and then to the 12. This is the essence of the good news that we have believed and which the Corinthians had also believed. But what was it that Paul had received from God and which he had faithfully passed on through preaching to them? Because this was the basis upon which they existed and upon which we too exist. 4 things. That Christ died for our sins. The anointed Messiah, King, incarnate God, died in our place and on our behalf for our sins. And that had been recorded in the Scriptures and fulfilled, despite what Paul may have thought as a younger man. Secondly, that Christ was buried. That was a historical fact, which there were people who were witnesses of that. Thirdly, that Christ was raised in accordance with the Scriptures. Again, like his death, his resurrection, although unexpected at the time, had all been written about in the Scriptures of the Old Testament. And then fourthly, that Christ appeared, and there were many witnesses to that, Cephas and then many others. That was the essence of the gospel that Paul had preached to the Corinthians and which they had believed and upon which they stood. That is the gospel that should be being preached through and in our churches this Easter, and upon which we too stand. And what is the appropriate response to that fundamental gospel? What had the Corinthians to do? Paul tells them that they had to hold fast to it, not be moved from these truths. Well, may that be true of Amy and Ace churches this Easter. Happy Easter.